You feeling the squeeze on your ability to earn a great living as an estate planning attorney? What if there was a way to future proof your practice from AI, do it yourself platforms, financial advisors, legal insurance, and the there
of a leader and what distinguishes all other kind of visioning? I have the sense that while in the domain of an observer giving an all vision looks like some kind of an ideal, that what's actually there, present but there in some way, with vision in the realm of leadership is not an ideal, not something right, not something that ought to be, although when the leader speaks about vision, the vision in the domain of an observer giving an account, it will probably be made right and probably be made ideal. But I'm trying to say that what makes a leader may be, and I want you to consider this and do some thinking on your own about it, it may be that the possibility of being a leader isn't related to vision as an ideal. And then we have to begin to, well, what could vision be? How could it live if it wasn't going to live as an ideal? I have the sense that as an ideal, that vision in the domain of an observer giving an account will be something like an ideal, a remote possibility that we consider an ideal. The Hunger Project serves as a very, very good example for me in this case, because I've been close to the Hunger Project since its beginning, and I've been able to see what's happened to it in the world, and it kind of gets clear to me, and I can see that even in the beginning, I was kind of concerned about the end of hunger as an ideal. And one of the dangers about the end of hunger is that it's a very ready ideal. Very readily becomes the ideal. It would be right for people not to starve. It would be right for people's lives not to be damaged by an insufficient amount of nutrition. I mean, it kind of sits in the society as an ideal, as something right. And what motivates action in the field of hunger is this ideal of the end of hunger. And I'm really asking you to kind of consider that for yourself and look at it for yourself to see that what organizes people's behavior, why people make donations, why people are working, is that the end of hunger is a kind of an ideal. And not only is it an ideal, but everybody's happy with it as an ideal. We're ready to reinforce it as an ideal. We're ready to do business with the end of hunger as an ideal. In fact, it looks like the right place to do business. If you take this whole issue about ending hunger from the perspective of market research, you say, well, ending hunger, that's pretty good. That's hot in the marketplace because it's an ideal everybody has. Only I have the suspicion that things that live in the market as an ideal, that the action derived from ideals somehow don't make a difference. That is to say, somehow leaders are not working on vision as ideal, not that they don't know how to manage a vision as an ideal in the domain of an observer giving an account, but that vision cannot live like a power when leadership is going to happen as an ideal. One of the ways that I talked about the end of hunger is as a very practical matter, not merely practical for the people who are hungry and not merely practical for us who would benefit by having a world free of hunger, but from the perspective that if we did handle hunger, we would have said something to ourselves about who we are, the being of which would leave us in a more powerful place as human beings. Now, that's kind of something different than an ideal, if you can hear that. That's something you've got to kind of create for yourself and generate for yourself. It doesn't lie in the culture as an already something right, but rather it begins to be a new opening. You know, one of the things that I always said about what we did in space was that we really missed the real fallout benefit. I mean, there's a lot of conversation about the fallout benefits of our space program, such that we now have things that we can put on our tile floors that protect the tile floors better than we did before. They've come up with new materials to polish floors with as a fallout, and that's been very valuable. And lots of things in the medical profession. I just saw an ad for a hearing aid that's so small it just sits inside your ear. Surely some of that miniaturization was a fallout of the space program. But what never fell out of the space program was a saying to ourselves, like creating ourselves, that we can create possibility like an opportunity. That we don't just have the opening to create possibility like an ideal, but that we can create possibility in such a way that in the creation of the possibility, we're empowered to realize the possibility. That we can create possibility such that the creation of the possibility mobilizes the forces to fulfill the possibility. That we can create possibility such that the creation of the possibility includes, incorporates, and actually makes use of what resists the possibility. So that fallout we never got. We kind of wound up reinforcing that we were as smart as we hoped we were, rather than we were bigger than we imagined we were. And I have the sense that vision as an ideal works something like that. So the question is, what is the nature of a vision that is appropriate to leadership? What is vision in leadership really? Not in the domain of an observer giving an account, and not in the domain of presence, but what is the domain of distinction in which vision would have to live? See, again, I'm trying to tease you into the distinctions rather than give you information. So over the years, people have come to me with more good ideas than you can shake a stick at. And I mean, man, really excited about the ideas. And good ideas. And it's clear to me, and it has been clear to me for a number of years, that there's a distinction between a good idea to which you're ready to devote your life and about which you can speak with enormous excitement, and a vision like a possibility. So I want to start to tease into existence that distinction for us. Those things about which we're excited, those things which reach out and grab us and pull us in and own us, and that which lives as an authentic possibility, which invites an action which is ourselves. See, one of the things about a vision as it shows up in leadership, it seems to me, is that a participation in that vision and engaging in that vision is something very akin to what we have ordinarily called self-expression. That people somehow find themselves when they're participating in a vision as contrasted with a good idea. I don't know, but I know it needs our attention, that we need to break the code on this stuff people are excited about that are really good ideas, and for the moment I'll just give it a name, like a good idea, and a vision, which is something that has power beyond a good idea, power beyond the excitement, power beyond the argument for itself. So I don't know, but I want us to inquire into that And the first place that I'd like to begin the inquiry is in Minneapolis, St. Paul. So who is on the phone from Minneapolis, St. Paul?
Peter.
Peter, hi.
Werner, my question has to do with practice. The metaphors that I hear you using for distinguishing leadership, like tennis and Aikido, imply practice. And so does perhaps the method of inquiry that you are asking us to engage in. And so my request is that you tell me about the role of practice in leadership.
Well, I don't really understand practice all that well, so it's something about which I'm curious, like inquiring into. One of the things that I'm satisfied with now is if we use the analogy of riding a bicycle, one does not learn to ride a bicycle through practice. I say that you can get on a bicycle and fall off endlessly and never, quote, learn to ride a bicycle. I say that what happens when we say that the person is practicing and they've learned to ride a bicycle through practice is that somehow whatever it is we call practice, when we're speaking about it like a presence, is the opening for the creation of distinctions. So we've got practice, which I'm saying in one way of interpreting what that means, as one interpretation, simply has no power, like you can get on a bicycle and fall off forever and never, quote, learn to ride a bicycle. I'm saying that the other interpretation of practice as an opening for the establishment of distinctions is interesting because it could learn to what we call riding a bicycle, wherein I assert that what we mean by I've learned to ride a bicycle is that I am the distinction. Or to say that same thing in a different way, I am now a clearing in which balance can show up as distinguished from all of the other possibilities when I'm riding a bicycle.